Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kristen Nisbet-White, and I am a member of the Career Development Center team here. I also want to acknowledge that today's event is co-sponsored by the Graduate Public Service Internship Program Office. During the session today, we're going to have the chance to learn more about opportunities with the USDA and how to navigate USA jobs. So our guest speaker today is Mark with the USDA, and I'm going to turn it over to him in just a moment. But before I do, just want to have a couple quick housekeeping reminders. If you can, remain on mute while our presenter is speaking, but feel free to use the chat to type in questions, and then we will have some time for Q&A at the end. We hope you enjoy today's session and have the opportunity to learn more about how you can advocate for yourself and market your strengths and skills and experiences through the USA Jobs application, and think about how you can promote yourself into different types of opportunities with that. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Mark, who can more fully introduce himself, and he will lead the content today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Schloisener, and my last name is 11 letters long. It's difficult to spell and hard to pronounce, and this is how you remember it. Schloisener rhymes with poisoner. That's how you say it. Schloisener rhymes with poisoner. I have been with an organization called the National Agricultural Statistics Service, NASS. I've been with that organization for 37 years. I'm a square peg in a square hole that works for me. Part of my duties are college recruiting. So I'm hoping I can find some people that would like to work for the National Agricultural Statistics Service and are qualified to do the job. If I can't do that, I can at least tell smart young people how to look for another federal job. And most people, what I find, college students are unfortunately very unaware of how to find a federal job, how to do a federal resume, which is different than a private industry resume. And so I intend to spend most of my time on the website where the federal jobs are located. I will also give some resume tips and pointers for doing a federal resume, and it is different. And I will also talk a little bit about my organization. All right, Kristen, are you seeing my PowerPoint on the screen?
Yes, I am.
All right, so I'm going to pause on my second slide just for a minute because there's my contact information. And if you would prefer to talk to me one-on-one or send me an email, go ahead and scribble that down. I'll leave it up on the screen for a little bit. So I am a part of USDA, and USDA is really a very large organization with more than 100,000 employees all over the country. My little slice of that pie that I work in is about 800 people. We're really a pretty small group within USDA. My particular role is communication and outreach for this organization, and it's focused within the state of Illinois. So I talk to farmers, I talk to farm groups like Illinois Corn Growers Association. There are other commodity groups. I also do the college recruiting, as I'm doing right now. I'll show my contact information one more time, but I'll go very quickly through my organization. The Department of Agriculture was formed in 1862, and our little subgroup of it was formed a little bit after that in 1863. We do like to claim old presidents, for founding fathers as some of our founders, and George Washington did actually do a survey of farmers in 1791, and that's what we do. We do surveys of farmers and ranchers. We publish reports. Maybe the best analogy that for people who aren't aware of what we do, most people are aware of the monthly unemployment rate report, right? The jobs report. It comes out the first Friday of every month, and it makes the news, and the stock market might go up or down depending on what is in that report. That's one government report talking about one aspect of the US economy. There are many other reports of that nature. Housing starts, durable goods orders, the inflation rate, that's making the news in the last few months. Those are all government reports that are made public to everyone, but are measurements of the US economy. We are the group that measures American agriculture. 12 regional field offices plus Washington, D.C. We are an apolitical organization, no political appointees. Most of the people working for us are numerically skilled people. Our closest, there is an office in Springfield, Illinois, and there's just two of us there. We are part of a regional field office in St. Louis, and that map, if you look close, you can kind of tell that some dots or some cities are underlined. Those are the regional offices. So St. Louis is a regional office, and it serves the states of Illinois and Missouri. There are 12 around the country. This is what we do. We gather data on agricultural production and economics. We do the Census of Agriculture, which is every 5 years, and we do statistical consulting. And the people that use our reports, a lot of them are farmers and ranchers, but also buyers and processors. You know, once the crops and livestock are produced, then there's a lot of business that happens after, changing it into the food we eat and shipping it to the places where we buy it. Another good story to tell us, what are we doing and why it's important? Imagine this coming January, and I'm sorry, that's a phone that I cannot mute. Imagine that this coming January, there's a terrible freeze in Florida and the strawberry crop in Florida devastated. That's going to show up in one of our reports. And someone who's in the produce business for a grocery store chain in the southeastern United States, they're going to look at that report because it's part of their job. And they're going to realize they can't buy the strawberries they usually buy in Florida. They're going to start calling people in California. And the people in California that grow strawberries, they're going to see that report too, and they're going to go, okay, I bet my strawberries are more valuable now. And the people in the shipping industries that have, you know, special trucks, refrigerated trucks to move things around, they're going to start making different arrangements based on the report that we publish. We have an excellent infrastructure system in this country. We can move food around easily. So while there are, every year, there are food production problems somewhere, they don't last very long because we can ship the food around to alleviate those problems. But if you want to ship the food around, you got to know where the problems are. You need the information to help so that the infrastructure can work, and we provide that information. We do something like 400 reports in a year. It's a lot. Some of them are market sensitive data. The price of corn or soybeans or cattle will probably change when we produce a report. And some of these are principal economic indicators for the US. So let's talk about jobs. The US citizenship is required for the full-time positions, but it's actually not required for internships. Basically, you've got to have the 4-year degree. Again, this is for the full-time job. This is for an entry-level statistician at NASS. You need that BS degree or higher, at least 9 semester hours in those sciences and 15 hours in math and statistics, and at least 6 of those hours in stats. So ballpark, 2 stats classes, 3 other math classes, and a 4-year degree. That's the basic minimum educational requirements. A little bit about pay. Those GS numbers on the right side of the screen, GS7 in our world corresponds to a bachelor's degree, GS9 master's degree. And the pay levels change based on where you are. There's higher cost cities get higher salaries. There's a lot more information out there, and I will talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to go into a little bit more on benefits of the federal career, which I think are tremendous. Then I'll go into looking for the jobs.
Mark, could you read
Yes,
that website? Could you read that website out in case we have any visually impaired people who watch later?
Very good. And you know, I'm learning about Section 508 compliance. Thank you. That was Kathy, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So the website is www.nass.usda.gov. That's NASS, National Agricultural Statistics Service.usda.gov. And then you would click on About NASS, and then you would click on Career Opportunities. Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to have to work on my Section 508 compliance. This slide was given to me by a friend, and it shows the fastest growing jobs over the next decade. Actually, number 1 is the wind turbine service technician with a projected growth rate of 68% and a median pay of $56,000. Statisticians, that's my world, they're number 4 on that list with a growth rate for jobs of 35%. And they're actually saying median pay of $92,000. And that is probably true, but it's not an entry-level pay. Entry-level pay is $40,000 and $50,000. We've got to be real about that. Further down the list, number 9 is data scientists. Number 6, information security analysts, all with expected large growth. Let's face it, any large organization has got a bunch of databases, a bunch of data sets. They're gathering data on the people, their customers. Every time you go to the grocery store, if you've got one of those cards, they're tracking what you buy. Hopefully they're sending you the coupons you want. Federal benefits. Health insurance is quite good. That your employer, the government, will pay about 3/4 of the total cost, and you'll pay about 1/4. There are also many choices. Some of you may be aware that you or your parents are going through a problem in that Blue Cross Blue Shield, one of the largest health insurance players in the area. And Springfield Clinic and Blue Cross Blue Shield do not get along right now. They have broken ties as of November 17. So my wife and I have a quandary. We had Blue Cross and Blue Shield for more than a decade. We like it. We also like our doctors. We've had them for more than a decade. And we're decided we're going to keep our doctors and get new health insurance. And because I'm a federal employee, I'm very fortunate. I have numerous choices. There are many choices for health insurance, and I'm making a change right now. What we call our 401k is called TSP, Thrift Savings Plan, and there are government matching funds up to 5%. You can put in more than 5%. There are no matching funds after that. There's a pension plan, which is actually quite rare these days. Hardly any private industry employers are providing pension plans to their staff. The federal government does, and it's quite good. It's basically years of service times high 3 salary times 1%. And I see there's a question, Kathy.
Does the matching plan start immediately, or do individuals have to have a certain amount of time before they're able to get into that?
Thank you for the question. The government matching funds on the 401k start immediately. In fact, as an employee, if you contribute 0 to your 401k, your employer will pay 1%. I'm holding up one finger. That may be a little bit hard to see. Yeah, I can't do it when I'm doing I do this better in person. If you contribute 0, you will get 1%. The first 3 percentages that you contribute are matched fully. So you put in 3, you've already got 1, and those 3 are matched fully. You put in 3, you get a total of 7%. Your 4th and 5th percent are matched half each. So if you put in 5, you will get 10. You can put in more than 5%, there's just no more matching. And it does start immediately. The best thing you can do for yourself, talk to your parents. If you're not smart about this, get smart about this. Investing in your retirement early is the smartest thing you'll ever do. There are other benefits in federal employment, including Social Security and such. A little bit about daily job duties. It is a data analyst job. You would work on numerous different projects. Some might be crops, some might be livestock. You would be teaching, after you've got some experience, you would be teaching people to gather the data. You would not be gathering the data yourself, maybe a little bit. I do some, but mostly you're a data analyst. You would be leading projects. A small project you would handle all by yourself, and the sample size might be a few hundred. And it would take place over 10 days or 2 weeks. It'd keep you pretty busy for a week. A large project, the sample sizes will be in a few thousand, maybe even 10,000. And then there's a whole team of people working on it. And you've got to coordinate that team and communicate with the team, something like 20 people. There's about 25 people in our regional field office, plus 2 in Springfield, Illinois, and 2 in Columbia, Missouri. So you're looking at micro level data analysis. That's sort of one farm at a time, but also macro level data analysis. What is the overall average showing you? And when we publish our report, what is the number we should publish? And recognize the impact that it may have on the price of corn or the price of cattle. So we've got good software that will find unusual reports and kind of put them on your desk, you might say. Our software will find the unusual data and ask you to look at it. And then you're going to dig into that record, research it, and find out maybe it's unusual but valid. If it's valid, you're going to put a note in the database. You know, this The yield is exceptionally low on this particular farm because it's an organic farm. Okay, so they don't get the high yields that other farms are getting. Perfectly valid, but unusual still. Now, if there's a mistake in the data that's reported by that farm, I want you to update the database and maybe leave a note as to what you did and why. So again, the software is going to find the unusual reports, but we want people to evaluate the individual reports, the individual farms, and make a correction if needed. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. If there are questions about sort of daily job duties, I'll be glad to take them. Other than that, I'm going to move into looking for a job on the internet.
Is there ever a concern or a worry that what you all produce in your report might have a negative impact on a farm area?
Yes. That is, we're aware, in particular, the price impact that our reports can have. And we are, in some cases, blamed for moving the price around. We are reporting supply, domestic supply. Other parts of USDA are reporting demand. And the agricultural world is very much international. In the United States, most of what we buy, a lot of what we buy is imported. We have a balance of trade that is negative. That is, we buy much more from other countries than we sell to other countries. Televisions, I don't think there's any television made in the United States. I don't think there's any cell phones made in the United States. There's a lot of things that we buy that are made in other countries. In agriculture, it's the other way around. We do import a lot of food from other countries, but we export much more. Recently, there's been essentially a trade war with China, and things got very squirrely for a while. And now the last year and a half, China is buying lots of American food. The beef exports broke a record for the third quarter of this year, and China was up 300%. They're now the second biggest importer of beef, rather than, fifth or 10th. So the amount of food we are producing in this country is a valuable item to know, because then we can export it. If there is more than people expect, well, then the price is going to go down. The farmer may not like that. We are reporting facts. Kathy, I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and go to USAJobs.gov.
I see there's another hand up.
Oh, Kristen, please.
I was just going to ask, at the top of the session, you had mentioned, that this position has been a really good fit for you. And so you've stuck around for the long haul. And I just wondered if you could share what you enjoy most, or what kind of keeps you engaged in what you're doing.
You bet. You've stolen my closing line, but I'll deliver it.
Well, if it's coming up later, then.
No, let's keep the conversation going. I like it because I'm a data nerd. That's who I am. Spreadsheets are my jam. And if that's not your thing, you might be able to do this job, but you maybe not love it. What works for me is I'm solving numerical puzzles or problems on a daily basis. Sometimes they're small, simple problems, and I'll solve 20 of them in a day. And sometimes they're much bigger, more complicated problems, and it takes me 3 days or a week to figure it out. But that's something I like doing. I also like the fact that I am providing a service that is in the name of our organization. I am providing a service primarily to the people that are involved in agriculture and food production, but it's also a service to everybody that eats. And that's most of my friends and probably all of your friends. When we'd like to have a safe and abundant food supply in this country, and that's one of the reasons for the USDA. USDA has a very broad purview, including food safety and food inspection. Also teaching people to, for instance, grow their own vegetables and things like that. A lot of scientific research. We're the bean counters. How much have we got? If we know how much we have, then maybe we can figure out how much we can sell. And that makes me feel good. I'm providing a service. So here I am at the homepage for USA Jobs, and some people use the keyword box up here in the top left, and if that works for you, go ahead. It's not my best idea. I'm going to show my better idea in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and type in statistician, because I was kind of surprised at what came up. So if I just type in statistician, I've got 39 jobs that just came out. Right now they're sorted by relevance. I'm going to change that sort. I'm going to go salary, ascending. I got the lower paid jobs on top. And this is for a recent graduate economist or statistician working for the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. One thing I'm going to do though, this is a statistician. I just did a query into a ginormous database of all the federal jobs that are out there. And the one factor or filter I have is statistician. That's the only thing I've got. Look over here on the right. By the way, Kristen, can you see my mouse moving on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So over on the right side, there's this box that says open to the public. I'm going to check the box. And while I've got 39 jobs now, once I check the box, I only have 27. And you're going to need to do that, right? Otherwise, you're going to find jobs you're not qualified for unless you're a current federal employee. So you can use this system, checking these various boxes, to build a more complicated query and focus in on a particular job that you like. If you're just sort of browsing to see what's out there, go ahead and scroll through it. I found something, it was a pharmacist position. Really surprised me. And now I can't find it. One more thing, I'm going to take off the open to the public, put it back to the 39 jobs. You may be interested to know that I didn't. The Federal Aviation Administration is hiring for statisticians. I was stunned, had no idea. So as you're doing just browsing to see what's out there, yeah, maybe using this keywords box is a way to go. I want to point out here in the second one down where it says survey statistician GS 1530-07, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff means something. The 1530 is the job series or the skill set. And every one of the federal jobs has one of these numbers, a 4-digit number that tells you the skill set. With a 4-year degree from UIS, you will probably be qualified for 5 or maybe 10 different federal skill sets. Well, how do you know what they are? I want to show you that. I'm going to go back to the home page for USA Jobs by clicking on the top left there. Scroll down a bit. Here's a good link for you, students and recent graduates. I would encourage you to go there and do a little bit of looking around. If I scroll down a little bit more, there's a link that says federal occupations college major. I'm going to click on that one. And here you've got all kinds of jobs listed with words we understand like accounting. So if you're into accounting and that's your jam, look at all the different types of accountants there are in the federal world. There's more than a dozen. They each have this little 4-digit number after it. And that's the job series. You can use those to drill down and focus on a particular skill set or job series. I'm going to go down to statistician. And I encourage you to look through this and use your imagination. They are trying to list out all the college majors. They can't. There's too many and they're changing all the time. But here under statistics, there's 15 different skill sets or job series for statisticians. We tend to hire this 1529 and 1530. And I'm going to go back and do a job search focused specifically on them. So I'm going to go to the top of the page, go back to the USA Jobs, go to the home page, and instead of searching in the keywords, I'm going to use this blue box on the right and do a search. And I'm going to use the filters that they've created. I'm going to start with open to the public and check that box. And currently there are 10,766 jobs available now to the open public, to the general public. Let's filter that down. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. If you're really dying to work for the Federal Reserve, you can use this department and agency to drill down to that. Or if you want to work for Homeland Security or some organization I've never heard of before, you can drill down through the department and agency. I'm going to use series because that's the skill set. If you figure out what skill sets you've got and you want to search for them, see who's hiring, I'm going to 1500 here at the top. I'm going to check 1529 and 1530. So I've got 3 filters in my box, in my search. Open to the public, 1529 or 1530. Notice this one that says save this search, very important. Once you've built your profile on USA Jobs, that's basically name and email address. That's your profile. Then you can start building searches and saving them. You build one that you like and think is finding you what you're looking for, save the search. And if next month someone posts a new job that matches your criteria, you're going to get an email message. So you're not searching all the time. You're building searches that work for you. Those are probably the best searching tips that I have. Are there questions about that? Because I'm going to move on to resume tips here in just a bit. All right, I'll recap by saying there's more than one way to search. The keywords is a good way to maybe just see what's out there and do broad scope searching. That job series number, that 4-digit number, I think that's a great way to go forward. Then you're liable to find some organization you've never heard of before, but they want your skill set. They're providing you challenging and rewarding work that you're trained for. But if you've never heard of that organization before, how are you going to find them? And my theory is you look for those people that are looking for your skill set using the 4-digit job series number. All right, let me go back to my PowerPoint, talk a little bit about resumes. I'm going to skip past some of this USA Jobs stuff. I better say this. If you've been to more than one school, upload all your transcripts. Someone you've never met before is going to review your application, and somewhere in the job announcement it's going to say how many hours of higher education are required. This person you've never met is going to look at your transcripts and see if you meet the criteria. And if you don't, you go in the round file. Sorry, they won't call you up. They won't ask you, did you actually have another class? Hold on, Kathy, I'll get right to you. So definitely upload all your transcripts to make sure that all your math classes are counted for, etc. Kathy.
Do they need to be official transcripts or unofficial? Okay.
Unofficial, I was nodding my head because I appreciate the question. Unofficial transcripts are fine for the job application. I'm pretty sure before you're hired, you will have to provide the official one. And that's what, at least $5 these days, isn't it? So you can apply with an unofficial transcript. My opinion, get a profile on USA Jobs, upload your documents now, because someone is going to want to, some of the job announcements close quickly. They're only open for a few days. If you see the job that you like and then you start building your transcript, your application, including your resume and your transcript, that's going to be long. Upload all those documents. I would say use a cover letter, especially if you are about to graduate, maybe you're graduating this December, and you're taking courses that will get you to the required educational limits. Put that in the cover letter. I'm currently taking my 5th math class. That last note about a letter from a professor, a lot of times economics students will take a high-level econ
Uh-oh, we lost you.
class if the professor will write an if-stical in nature. Oh, can you hear me, Kristen?
Yeah, so if you could repeat what you said, it did sort of freeze for a moment. So if you could back up the story a little bit.
Okay, and I did get a note that my internet connection is unstable. Sorry.
It's okay, it happens.
If you are taking a class, let's say in high-level economics, it has a lot of statistical content in it. You could use that to count as a statistics class if you have a letter from your professor that says the class has at least 50% statistical content. Couple of federal resume myths. You know, you need to keep it short. Don't. That's the short answer. Don't do short and pithy. That is private industry style. You were probably taught to fit it all on one page or maybe two. With a federal resume, you want to put everything you've done in there. Be full and complete, and it can be pages, no problem. There is a link on this slide, and Kristen, you've got this file. You can send it to those who want it. The link will take you to where I found these federal resume myths. Another myth is that you need to go to Washington, D.C. That's not true. The last bullet point on this slide I'm going to talk about, the myth is you need to tailor your federal resume to each position. The website says that is partially true. I think it's just true. If you're going to be good at applying for a job, you want a specific resume for a specific job. You probably cannot build one resume that works for 5 different jobs. They're all different. You want to make 5 different resumes. Well, that's kind of difficult, but here's the way you do it. You build one master resume. You put all the stuff you've ever done in this one file. Look through your important college textbooks. Go to the table of contents, and there's the techniques you learned in whatever your course of study is. There are the content that you learned and studied. Put those items as bullet points into your master resume. Then when you're applying for job number 1, you look at your master resume and copy and paste particular bullet points that match up with that particular job. The rest of your application is the same. It's your name, address, and phone number. It's your college transcripts. It's a cover letter that might need a little bit of schmoozing from one job to the next. But put your experience and your accomplishments, make them specific to the job you're applying for, and use the master resume technique to do that. So when you go for your second resume, it's really pretty quick. You just take a few different special bullet points from your master resume and put them into application number 2. Last thing I'll say, and then I think I better take questions. In my opinion, you should build your resume on a website. Use a federal website to build a federal resume to look for a federal job. That just makes sense to me. You know, keep your other resume, your private industry resume, and if you want to mail that one resume out to 10 different companies, it might work, but you won't have 10 different people say, I love this resume. You got to make it different for each particular job. That's how you get good at this. That's how you make your resume pop and look different from all the others, because they all say that you can leap over tall buildings in a single bound. What I want to know is you've studied this statistical technique. You have given a group presentation in class. You've got communication skills, and whatever else the job is looking for, make sure your resume looks like that. All right, that's about all I've got, and I will be glad to take questions now.
We hear a lot about applicant tracking systems and some electronic entity reviewing resumes for keywords and key skills before it gets to a person. You've mentioned several times that a person is reviewing it. So does the federal government use the electronic tracking systems less than other areas of employment potentially?
I don't know the answer. For what my organization does, we used to do it all in-house, and now we're contracting it out to another part of USDA to a group of people that are, I don't want to say clerks, that's kind of an old-fashioned word, but they're not statisticians. They're not policymakers. These are people who process paperwork. That's what they do. And they're checking the resumes to see if the various educational requirements, job requirements are met. For what we're doing, I don't think that searching algorithm is used, but I also know there's other times when people are trying to hire, 100 or 500 people, and I can't imagine doing that one at a time. I imagine they're using algorithms. So we might be hiring 10 at a time, right? We've got 800 people total. I think in the course of a year, our attrition is 20, 30, 40 people. So we're not on the larger scale where that type of tool would be needed.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Please.
Yes.
When I applied for a couple of federal jobs, I had seen that there were like different, you could select essentially different ways you were qualified. So it said like, has a bachelor's degree in natural science, as like one of the options, and then there were kind of different variations of experience and education. For entry-level federal positions, is it more important that you check, for instance, like at the end of my current internship, I'll have a master's degree. So is it more important that I check, has a master's degree in a natural science field, or is it better to check has 1 year experience or 2 years experience in the field professionally?
Okay. I think the short answer is I don't know for any one specific job. I want to show something on the screen though. I'm trying to find a really good example of what you're talking about. Okay, I'm going to do a screen share and see if this will help, because the federal job announcements can be kind of goofy like that. Eric, are you seeing on the screen trying to specialized experience for the GS-11, all that? Okay,
Yep.
Good. So the particular, I'm in the details of one particular job announcement. I was trying to find one exactly like you mentioned, Eric. I didn't have one ready, but here they're talking about experience equivalent to the GS-9 grade level, which includes these things. I would put in your cover letter, I have accomplished these things, and I would make it very clear, in particular for the jobs that you've had. The college transcript will get you to your educational requirements, but you have job experience that you're saying is making you, maybe you should be hired at the GS-11 level, higher than the lower level. One job announcement can be open at different job levels. I'm trying to find that. Yeah, this one here is open at GS-11 through 13. And maybe you're qualified at GS-11, maybe you're qualified at GS-13. Your cover letter should say, I believe I'm qualified at GS-11 because here are my job experiences, and my transcripts will show my educational experience. And I would probably quote back to them these conditions here, a combination of education, all this stuff. This is what they're saying you need to have. Tell them you have it. Use the cover letter. Did that make sense, Eric? Did that give you a decent answer? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop the share, and I might poke around and try to find another one that can be complicated, where they say you will be qualified at GS-7 if you have these things. You are qualified at GS-9 if you have these things. If you don't say, I'm qualified at GS-9, well, they may hire you at GS-7. Make it clear, I am qualified at the higher level because of these accomplishments. Again, this system is built to avoid nepotism, right? They're not going to hire someone because you talked to me and made a bang up impression. I think you're awesome. That's not it. Someone's going to look at your paperwork. Your paperwork will get you to the interview stage. Then it's your firm handshake or your great Zoom skills, and you tell how you have done the things that this organization wants you to do for them. Then you're going to explain to that person, the interviewer, why you are a good fit for their organization. Your paperwork will get you to the interview. Your interview will get you the job.
And Mark, you mentioned to tell about jobs, but students should also include internships, leadership experiences, community work, all of those components as well, correct?
I agree 100%. I gave a thumbs up in one thing, and I should give the other fancy thumbs up from Zoom. That's why you don't want to limit your resume to 1 page or 2 pages. I don't know if you want to include the babysitting job you had when you were 15. Maybe that's not appropriate. But if you had some entry-level job at a restaurant or something, you were important to the people that were eating at that restaurant. Make it sound good and put it in your resume. And definitely include the educational skills you've learned. You ought to be able to say that you studied this technique and you got an A in the class or something like that. Make sure the person looking at your resume, your application, including your resume, knows that you have what they're looking for.
Could you speak a little bit about the, oh, it sounds like some feedback. Could you speak a little bit about the time, like a typical application, if you're applying for a position, the time consideration, and do you think it takes a little bit more time than maybe a private sector position in terms of turnaround from an application to some sort of acknowledgement of your application and potentially an invitation to interview?
Unfortunately, I think it does take a long time, and I think are trying for 90 days from point of application to job offer. And I wish that was faster. And I think everyone does wish it was faster. And I shouldn't say that. It's 90 days from application to first day on the job. The job offer would come earlier. Yeah, I wish it was a lot faster than that. And I think the feds, with their goal of thoroughness, with their goal of inclusivity, with their goal of avoiding nepotism, yeah, I think it takes longer. Got to jump through more hoops. That's just the way that is. Let me show a couple things. I'm going to do one more share, and I'd be glad to take more questions. Okay, so I did a job search, and I pulled back 36 different ones. One of my friends tells me, if you look at this, it's open for a year. And honestly, what he says is they're just grabbing resumes. They're not offering jobs, and he might be right. That's a year. Now here's this one. 2 weeks. That's what I'm used to. Normal is 2 weeks. And recently, when we've been hiring for entry-level statisticians, we do something like this. The job announcement is open for 2 weeks or until 250 applications are received, or some number like that. Then it stops. Yeah, we're getting too many. It takes too long to process them. So we put a limit on the number of applicants. And I think that's the other reason to start building your online presence with your transcripts. Build your resume. You can get it 80 or 90% finished as a statistician or an economist or whatever particular role you're studying in school. And then when you see one of these jobs that comes open and matches you, because your saved search has given you an alert, you ought to be able to finish up that application in, like a day or so. But if you had to start from scratch, you may get nudged out and there might be 250 people ahead of you, because some people have already done that. They're ready. They've already applied for a job like this. So get ready in advance. That's what I'm saying.
Any other questions from the group? And again, feel free to unmute and ask your question or drop it in the chat.
Let me say something to Sherry. I just heard your name the other day, and I believe you're dealing with interns in the public sector. Is that right?
Hi, Mark. Yes. Hi, I'm Sherry Elzinga. Yes, I actually am the director of the Graduate Public Service Internship Program. And so, in fact, some of the students on this call are in my program. So we are primarily, we're placing graduate students in state government agencies. However, I'd love to place them in federal agencies. We used to, I believe, prior to my time at UIS, place students in municipal and federal government. So I was thinking about reaching out to you and asking about your interest in interns possibly coming from UIS.
In general, we'd be interested. They'd almost certainly have to get down to St. Louis, be the closest place. And we just closed our intern job announcement in mid or late October. We're about to get the list of people that qualify. So it's late fall is when we're seeking interns that will then work the next summer.
Okay,
the
so
timing-
I think our program is a little bit different in that our students work part-time throughout the whole year
Oh, okay.
and then full-time in the summer. And we do have the capacity to place students in Chicago as well, but they're placed on a contract through the university with the host party.
Interesting. Okay, so, and we also allow interns to work more than just the summer. In fact, it's quite a good thing. We hire most of our interns, that is the ones that like us. You know, some of them take the internship, they don't like the job. Okay,
Mhm.
bye-bye. For the ones that like us, if they can do the job, we're gonna hire them a high percentage of the time. If the intern is able to accumulate enough hours worked, which is a little bit more than the summer, you know, if they do some work over, let's say, Christmas break or into January and through the fall, then they can accumulate enough hours to be transitioned to full-time without another competitive step. It's a paperwork exercise rather than a job application exercise. So it's much easier, much better for the intern and for us. We found someone who can do the job.
Mhm.
Let's keep them on. And so we make that transition, they make that transition from intern to full-time easily.
That's excellent. We should talk, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to talk to you outside of this forum and chat a little bit about maybe there might be some places to partner.
I love your thinking, and I'm gonna go ahead and show my contact information one more time.
I've got it, and I'm going to reach out to you following.
Please do. I'll be anxious to talk with you. I think the biggest federal employer in Springfield is probably the IRS, right?
Yes, and the USDA and the FBI.
Oh, I forgot about the FBI, yeah.
FBI has a big, I've been trying to make that, you know, we have a lot of criminal justice and legal studies and public admin majors, and I've been trying to make that relationship grow. But with our online students in Chicago, really any agency, you know, USCPA, any of them that have a Chicago presence, which is almost everybody, we would be able to put students there.
Yeah, Chicago's got to be huge for feds. Let the Federal Reserve, many others, probably groups I've never heard of before are there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the possibilities are endless.
Kristen, thank you so much for this opportunity. Sherry, good to meet you. And Kathy, nice to meet you and talk with you. For the three students, I wish you all the best. I hope you do consider a career in federal employment. My suggestion is go ahead and get on USA Jobs, build your profile, you know, upload your transcripts, do all those things, and go ahead and continue searching on the private industry world too. I mean, no one said you shouldn't narrow your focus too early. You should search broadly. There's some job out there for you that's perfect. You just haven't found it yet.
Thank you.
Mark, I just have to say thank you so much. I found your presentation extremely interesting. And I always think navigating the state of Illinois hiring is difficult, but the federal jobs have always been a huge mystery to me, and you demystified a lot of it. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Well, I hope I demystified it. Mostly when I talk with students at the real career fairs, and I can't wait to get back to in-person career fairs. I hope it happens this spring. You know, they don't know where to look to find a federal job. They go to what? Indeed, right? Isn't that where the young people go these days?
I think I have to defer to Kathy and Kristen, but I think so.
And those, again, students on the call, if you want to drop places that you're looking in the chat. But yes, indeed, it's definitely a popular place. For the sake of the audience that engages with this with the recording, I think we'll wrap up the conversation here unless there's any other final notes, Mark, that you wanted to share.
No, I think I've delivered all my good talking points. You know, there's the Fed Gov is a good thing. There's some really good financial benefits to it. It's a good thing for your personal well-being. You're also, in general, providing a service to someone else. That's the function of government. I hope you can find something that works for you.
Well, based on what you just said, I hope you're saving March 31st on your calendar.
Is that the career fair?
Yes, shameless plug, Career Fair is planning to be back in person on Thursday, March 31st, 2022. So there's
Well,
a
I've been to a number of your career fairs, and you guys do a really good job. I mean, you're great at it. So other universities, not so much. You guys do a really good job.
Well, thank you for that. We do our best, and we're trying to iterate as everyone else is in this time. But again, thank you so much. And again, I'm going to stop our recording here. And again, for those that are coming to this later, we thank you for sticking around. And there's been a lot of good information just in this candid conversation. And so thank you.
Take care.